Hey there, artist! Let's talk today about 5 different watercolor techniques. Let's get started. Artists, before we start learning about different watercolor techniques, first we need to wake up our watercolors. As you know, the watercolors are sleeping. Shh. They took a really long nap. Now it's time to wake them up. Here's how I wake up my watercolors. To wake up my watercolors, I need a brush and water, and this is what I do. I take a little bit of water on the end of my brush. Hello, Magenta. Hi, Miss Harden. Glad that you're here today, Magenta. Red, are you there? I'm right here, Miss Harden. Red, so glad that you joined us. I'm here. Orange, I see that you're excited today. Yellow. Miss Harden, someone put a green in me. Oh, yellow, I'm sorry to hear that. But I am glad that you're here today. Hello, green, time to wake up. Miss Harden, why are you waking me up? Hi, turquoise, good to see you today. Miss Harden, I love my color. Oh, turquoise, we do too. Some kids might think that there's not any pigment in this blue, but there actually is. We just have to wake it up. Hey, blue, are you there? Yeah, look, right here, Miss Harden. See, there's plenty. Purple. Hello, Miss Harden. And that is how I wake up my watercolors. Let's learn about the different watercolor techniques. First, we're going to start with wet on wet. To make the wet on wet technique, I need my brush with water and my paper. I'm going to wet this entire area fairly quickly because I don't want it to dry. If it dries, then the wet on wet technique will not work. So I'm just getting my paper wet as quickly as I can, and my watercolors are already awake. So now I'm going to pick my color, dip my brush into the paint, and barely touch my brush to the paper, and that's what happens. I can mix different colors by adding a different color and watching them blend together. The next technique is called wet on dry. It's where we take a wet brush and put it on dry paper, just like this. I notice that as I use up my pigment, it starts to run out, and that's when I need to go back and get more. Or also what I can do with wet on dry is I can blend my colors. So I'm going to take a little bit of red and a little bit of magenta and watch how they blend together. I just connect the edges. Looks like I need a little bit more red on that one. Oh yeah, there we go. So I have some blending taking place right here. That's called wet on dry because I put my wet brush on dry paper. The next technique is called salting. And for salting, I need a big section of really wet pigment. Again, if it's not super wet, it will not work. I lay down a bunch of pigment. Then I take my salt, I dump it in my hand, I pinch it with my fingers, and I drop it on my paper. It's kind of hard to see right now the final result of salting, but when my salt is dry, I'm able to wipe it off, and I can see this result here where it kind of looks like the salt picked up the pigment, which it actually did because the salt absorbs the water, and then when I wipe the salt off, the white is left behind. Creates a very interesting texture. With my leftover salt, I can just keep putting it on my paper, or I can find a trash can nearby and dump it in the trash can. And the next technique I want to show you is called blotting. With blotting, I just do my normal wet on dry. I can do a little bit of color mixing if I want. And then I take a paper towel and I remove some of that moisture, creating a very interesting texture. Then what I could do is take what's left on here and add it to a different part of my painting to create an even more interesting texture. The last technique I want to show you is called a masking technique. When I create the masking technique, this is what I do. I create my art, then I take masking tape, and I put the masking tape on top of the places where I don't want paint to go. Then when I add paint, the paint does not go where the mask was. And when I'm done, I can pull the mask off and I can see what was left underneath. So for masking, I use masking tape. I put tape on the places where I do not want the paint to go. Then I paint. When I'm done, I remove the tape and I can see what's left underneath. And these are the watercolor techniques that we will practice using. Happy art making!